As we pivot to the Browns-Bengals,
please.
Here's what's fascinating to me, because we had a chance to watch Deshaun Watson, who had all of training camp, knows the system. Granted, he hadn't played in 700 days, but there was a lot of rust.
Yeah.
And here comes a guy in 48 hours. Here's the playbook. It's this thick, and goes out there. So it really was. My mind was doing.
Why would Baker have rust though? He's been playing.
Right.
Because he's playing with all new players.
I know, but that has nothing to do with rust.
Nah, that's I told you before. It's like this: if you hadn't golfed for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And you go out there and try to golf and see how your golf game looks.
It's gonna be awful.
Now you know how to tee it up. You know how to drive.
But he was still practicing.
But here practicing at the driving range and practicing in the midst of a game.
Sure, you're absolutely right on that. My point is, I expected Baker, and I said this last night. I go, I hope he plays.
This is the last Baker point.
I don't think he will.
Watson, Bengals,
Okay,
Browns.
okay.
Last
Wow,
Baker point.
can you turn your volume down? You are blowing our ears out, bro.
Oh, my bad. Audio board issue still.
That was the sound of Jesus.
I know, it's like.
You calling me home? I ain't do nothing.
It was just interesting. It's fascinating to see that you can have variety of rust. It can be physical.
Yeah.
It can be up here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think what we learned from watching all this is we in the media make so much about, 700 days, he's going to have rust. Well, yeah, there is something to that. We also said, 2 days. I wanted him to play because I thought he was going to look worse than Watson.
Look,
right.
Because he should have.
I was happy for him. He played well.
Because he didn't know anybody. He didn't know the players. He didn't know the play calls. He didn't know the offense.
But he's been playing. That's a big difference.
But not in this system.
But I didn't expect him to play well. I didn't expect Deshaun Watson was as bad as you can play.
Watch this. Deshaun Watson said something in his press conference. He said, look, they said, Deshaun, we saw you running gassers and sprints between plays. Yeah. He said, yeah. He said, I got out there and between calling a play, getting the play, relaying the play, doing the snap, scrambling around, he said, I was gassed.
Bro,
I'm tired.
Read that and tell me you're not out of breath.
That's
like you're in the huddle.
Look,
you're the quarterback. Read it and tell me you're not out of breath.
Right claw Z short, Lander Z strong, X Revo Z low blocker. What is that? Lock block? Lock back. Can 2 Jet X Monday Astro Read Alert Monday Deacon Flow F Panama on the Omaha. Yeah, that's long as hell.
Now you got like 4 seconds to do it, so you're not breathing.
Yeah, and then say for instance you're running and you scrambling.
Yeah, what now? Now you're playing street ball.
And now you get the call from the referee, you get the call from Stefanski, and you're looking around, and you're like, okay.
So Deshaun's like, my wind is gone.
My wind is not there. I have not, and wind, playing basketball. I used to go from playing basketball for football all the way to go to the state championship game. That used to be December 3rd. Mm-hmm. The basketball team had already been conditioning in the fall since September.
Then you hit that hardwood.
And then you hit the hardwood. You're like, I play both ways. I'll never come off the field. It's a big difference
because you never stop.
Because it's 3 seconds of average play. But when you getting out there, and when I was in and when I was in high school, I used to play small forward.
At McKinley?
Yeah.
Did you really?
What? Yes. I play small forward. So you mean when you play these little small teams, they playing 3 guards. That kid about 6'1".
You chasing him.
And I'm chasing them off.
Wearing you out.
I'm chasing them off screens. They running flex on the baseline. I hate this.
He's breathing hard.
And the coach used to say, you can rest on offense. Yeah. I'm like, we got to play man-to-man the whole game. Man, my lower back was hurt.
So
that's a different
That's why
level.
your boy was running gassers, because he's like, I got to get myself prepared.
And he will look better physically against the Bengals. I don't care what anybody says, because there were some people that dismissed the idea that he would have rust. I expect him to take a quarter. And I said, we're going to measure this in quarters and not weeks? Don't judge Deshaun Watson until the last 2 games of the season.
And he doesn't get 100% pass. I mean, he played like crap. I mean,
he
did. You can't just every time he plays bad say he has rust.
No.
It's clear that was part of it, but he was awful.
He was.
Yeah, but whether it's Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson, making a snap judgment based on 1 game when we have a decent track record is stupid.
Well, it is, but it goes back to my point that about I always talk about the gap between the highest and the lowest. And I say, like most things, the truth is in the middle. And Baker Mayfield is the perfect example of that. His ceiling is what he did last night. his floor is what he did in Carolina. Because he was never that bad here. He just wasn't. He had some bad moments here. But he was awful in Carolina. I'm watching him, and I said one day on the show, I go, he's broken. This isn't about the quarterback.
Any quarterback could have a good game.
But you want your quarterback to be Tom Brady, where your high is here and your low is here. And the difference between them, so you know what you're getting. The problem with Baker is his high is here, his low is here. You don't know what the hell you're going to get.
The barometer this week is going to be even greater if you watch this game.
Yes.
Because you got Joe Burrow here. Right. He playing out his mind.
Well-oiled right now.
He playing like a smooth criminal right now.
Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson.
By the way, this cat Deshaun Watson, he has that in him.
He can do it.
He can do exactly what if Deshaun Watson come out, he can do exactly what Josh Allen does. He can do what Burrow does. He can do what anybody does.
100%.
But here's the thing. How quickly can he get that level? How quickly can you rise to the occasion?
Got to get that engine revved up.
He got to get that quick. Like he has to, and it's unfair, but it's very fun to watch.
Yeah.
I love watching. If you're top of the food chain, I'm going to see if you look on the sidelines and they say, we need one of them.
Yeah. This is what I'm looking forward to. Because most great players, they know when they play bad, boo. They absolutely know when you play bad.
Yeah.
So now
been killing him for 6 days.
You go back in the laboratory and waiting for the next day.
Yeah.
And the next day, I guarantee you, on Sunday, he's gonna be a lot better than he was last Sunday.
I hope so. And
if it starts making a connection, we're gonna have an interesting game down in Cincinnati. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yes,
listen,
yes,
my hope is that he does to Cincinnati what Baker did last night
He watched
to the Raiders.
that game, by the way.
Yeah.
Listen, I know he watched
watched
that game. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you guys about. I always ask pro athletes this about, like, what games you like to watch. How do you watch other games? Whenever there's a Thursday, Sunday, or Monday night.
On it.
They're on it. And by the way, the tweets that were going out last night from everybody across the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, wow. All of these star players, they all watch it. So here's what I want to ask you guys. How does that not impact Deshaun Watson as he's watching? Because he's knowing they paid me more money than any player's ever been paid to play football and to replace that guy, and I dropped a clunker last week.
Now you got to now it's a reflection on you. Right?
Yeah, you know what?
Right.
It's like Baker taking the spotlight and going, "What you got, bro?" And I think he'll answer the call.
If Watson plays terribly again this week,
it won't be good.
It's going to be full-blown panic. Fans are going to fully panic.
They shouldn't, but they will.
It's insane.
But they will.
Based on one good game from Baker and since the last time he played well was against the Bengals last year.
Well,
and then it's going to be full-blown.
You know what's going to be great? He plays next week. He plays Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers.
That's Monday Night Football.
On Monday Night Football. Right. And Herb Street and Al Michaels were really good last night. And I know at some point I did think it's like, okay, guys, he didn't just reinvent the sport. Let's slow down. I mean, for a while, and I love Herbie.
They was all in.
They were
like acting like he was doing this on a water field, and he was running on water. I'm like, guys, we don't even know if he's going to pull this off.
I was like this, Herbie.
And so,
calm down.
You know what it reminded me of? Who was the quarterback from Michigan? Shoelaces, the guy that didn't tie his shoelaces. Robinson. You guys remember him?
Oh, DeMarcus
Robinson. Remember they called him Laces because he didn't tie his shoelaces.
Denard Robinson.
Denard Robinson. Right, yeah. When he came in off the bench for his first game, I was watching it, and the broadcasters were making it seem like, give him Heisman right now. They were just singing his praises, and that's what it reminded me of last night. I'm like, guys, hold on, this is Baker Mayfield. I know he's going to take him down. I even was saying when I was watching it, he's going to drive him down at the end of this 98-yard drive. He's going to throw a pick. I know he's going to throw a pick in the end zone. That's who he is.
Well, we got this thing on Sunday, right? And so, the fever in this town is like, we still got a chance. Yeah. The Raiders got put away. They've got a better chance. I'm like, do we? Let's see what we got.
We do.
It depends on if we come to play. I always said we have some personnel that can compete if it's revved up right. But if it's not, right, you got to think that the Bengals have been hearing nothing about this, but in Cincinnati, like, you gonna let them do you again?
Oh, they're hearing it all
you
week.
Gonna let them do you again?
They got to be thinking we got to come out and put 50 on them, like, because they heard it all week, man. You think about what the Bengals are trying to go. They feel like they're at another level, which basically we went to the Super Bowl last year. This is our division. We're going to let you know. And don't get it twisted. You had them couple of wins, but we focused and fully ready to go.
Yeah.
Now, if Deshaun Watson comes in and put the cape on, we might have a game. But I will tell you this. If that cape ain't on and it looked like that regular stuff that we saw the other, it's going to get ugly. And they can wash you up out of here, dog.
He's got to play great for them to win. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
He has to be great.
You need, and it's going to be tough.
Jacoby was very good in the first win against Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I think the key, obviously the Browns, I think, got to turn in the two signature wins against the Bengals the last 2 years. There's been a key turnover early. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
The Browns need that. They need the turnovers
to help feed their offense.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it, because I think to expect Deshaun Watson to play after what we saw last week, I think we all expect to play a lot better.
Better.
But to expect to play him at elite level,
We'll be at Pro Bowl
that's tough
level.
to expect.
I actually think Baker playing well last night was good for the Browns because I do think it's going to elevate Deshaun Watson's want to.
He watched that.
He watched it.
Every
and he's hearing the whispers. He
and
knows.
And you always think about it because he even puts it in the terms like, man, this dude came in on 2 days. And I done been back a while. I've been taking some snaps. I played terrible last week. Nah, bro, I got to do something, bro. Like, people going to feel like I fell off. I ain't fall off out here.
Right.
We need to see it. We need to see that Superman we need the celebration. What happened to this? What happened to all the bow and arrows? We need that right now.
I hope we see it. Ben Baby covers the Bengals for ESPN. He's with us now. Ben, are the Bengals tired of hearing about the fact they can't beat the Browns?
Well, let me tell you this. Until they start getting those wins against the Browns, they're going to have to keep hearing about it. It's a team I'm sure y'all talked about, have lost 5 straight games to the Browns. And what I find interesting about this is that the last 2 games against Cleveland with the starters, they've been beat worse than anybody has beaten them so far. And that's what's fascinating. This is a Cleveland team that has gotten the best of the Bengals, even with their starters, and that's something the Bengals will want to change this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those last 2 games, those are the 2 worst games the Bengals have played since early last year. It is, and in both of those games, Ben, we just brought this up, there was a big turnover early that really changed the momentum in the game.
Yeah, I talked to Zach Taylor about that this week, about why these games have kind of been like that for the Bengals. And he said those turnovers were key. You go back in that game last year here at Paycor Stadium, Denzel Ward had that pick 6, and we asked Jamar Chase about the route, and he said that, to use a family-friendly phrase, it was a bad route. He used a more vulgar term to describe it, but they know that they can't do that. They know that Myles Garrett is a problem. We saw that first game where Myles, it just shows how good he is, the fact that he can be so disruptive, even when he's not pass rushing, drops off the line of scrimmage, gets a deflection that ends up being an interception. Those are the things the Bengals will have to worry about against Cleveland.
Ben, I think what's interesting here, and you could speak better than anybody on this, is in the previous meetings, the Browns have had a huge advantage in the trenches, right? The Browns' offensive line has been great. The Bengals' offensive line had been trash. The Bengals' defensive line was fine, but DJ Reader didn't play the last game. But now, I think this is interesting because now the Bengals' offensive line, from my perspective, has been a whole lot better the last month or so. The Browns' offensive line's been going in the opposite direction, and so maybe those advantages that the Browns had are not there. Is that fair? What do you expect in terms of that?
It's interesting. I think this might just be a bad matchup for the Bengals until proven otherwise. I mean, yes, the Bengals' offensive line has played better. We've seen Joe Burrow have so much more time in the pocket than he did earlier in the season. In that first meeting, he didn't have Jamar Chase, and they were still trying to figure that out. But, when I asked Joe about what makes this Cleveland matchup so unique, he said, Myles Garrett. He said, that's different than any other team. And I wonder if Myles just being on the other side of the ball is just such a unique factor for them to deal with. And yes, the Bengals have to deal with guys like TJ Watt. You go across the entire NFL, there's a lot of good edge rushers that you see in, day out. They saw Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL just a couple weeks ago. But when you look at Myles Garrett and what he does, the fact that he's so explosive, so big, so long, I had one assistant tell me, go back and look at a rep he had against the Texans where he came in on the inside and kind of Euro-stepped him at the line of scrimmage and got the quarterback.
Euro-stepped him.
And for the fact that you could do that at that size, it's just unbelievable. I mean, Myles is a freak. and the Bengals are going to have to figure out how to defend it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I remember seeing that play. I know exactly the one you're talking about, and I said at the time, I've always said there are things that Aaron Donald can do that Myles Garrett can't do, but there's nothing that Myles Garrett can do that Aaron Donald can't. I saw that play and I go, Aaron Donald can't do that. Hey. Nobody can do that. It was incredible.
If you smart out there, they stood him up at the 3 technique.
Imagine
and they gave
he had
him a
players around
go.
him on that line.
Oh. They gave him a 2-way go. Yeah. And he says, oh, no, go this way.
It was so slick.
Finish with the left hand. But, Ben, I'm going to tell you what. Myles Garrett is on one side, but I'll say this. They ain't got nothing in the middle. And the Cincinnati Bengals, I felt last game, abandoned that run way too quick. Samaje Perine has been running with his hair on fire. Joe Mixon might be available for this game.
He is.
If they decide to run it, I don't know if the Browns can stop it.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I think the exact same thing. When you look at how much the Browns have struggled against the run, up the middle, they don't seem to have a whole lot. You look at what they have at defensive tackle, and I think that kind of sets them back a little bit and makes it tougher for the linebackers as well. I think that the Bengals would be wise to use that rushing attack, and I see Joe Mixon on the screen right now. He will be back for this game against the Browns. You know, he cleared concussion protocol earlier in the week, and he knew that Samaje Perine did a good job filling in, and his guy going back to his days at Oklahoma, they feel like that could be a potential 1-2 punch for them moving forward.
So,
yeah,
Bill,
I think that's the key.
let me ask you this, because it always seems to me that Zach Taylor is always a position where the Browns put him in a position where he starts to panic and question what he does. The Browns get rolling. He never really has an answer for it. You get Myles Garrett coming in on an edge rush, and then you got Burrow looking over his shoulder, and that's when the Browns seem to make progress here. Can they withstand the heat that the Browns? Because the Browns are coming here. They're coming with a position of trying to win a game here. So, you think Zach Taylor has a game plan that's formidable on Sunday, or will he go back to his panic mode?
You know, I feel like this offense is clicking so much better, and Zach Taylor deserved some criticism earlier in the year for what this offense looked like when the run scheme wasn't really working. And to his credit, he ripped up the run scheme midway through the season. They put their egos aside and said, you know what, we may be a team that likes to run wide zone, wants to be under center, but this isn't working. So what they did is they went to more a gap scheme in the run game that seems to have worked. They put Joe Burrow back in shotgun a lot and been more of a team that runs out of shotgun. You've seen a lot of duos. You've seen a lot of inside zone, tight zone, and a lot of those gap scheme formations where you've seen a lot of pullers as well on the line of scrimmage. That has really helped Joe Mixon. That has really helped Samaje Perine, and importantly, has taken a lot of pressure off that offensive line in those pass protection sets and given them more manageable situations. So we'll see if that continues to be the trend against Cleveland.
Ben, obviously the Browns are going to want, with Deshaun Watson not knowing what he's going to look like coming off of last week, the Browns are going to want to run a lot with Nick Chubb. We know Nick Chubb has had a ton of success against the Bengals. DJ Reader, I mentioned before, the Bengals' best run stopper, didn't play the last game. And Lou Anarumo's done a magnificent job with that. When they first hired him, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And he's done a magnificent job as defensive coordinator with a bunch of just solid guys, not really anybody spectacular, maybe Hendrickson. But what's their game plan, you think, defensively? Because we know how good Watson can be, but Nick Chubb has killed the Bengals. So what do you think the Bengals' game plan is defensively going into it?
It's funny you say that because I think everybody in Cincinnati was asking who Lou Anarumo was when Anarumo got here. They did not hit on a lot of their defensive coordinator choices early on. I think that's been widely reported. And he struggled the first couple of years as that defense tried to find that identity. And, he was under a lot of heat last year. We saw that defense play better towards the end of last season and really carry them through the playoffs. They will definitely try to stop Nick Chubb. But what I think is going to be the key matchup in this game is not Nick Chubb in the running game, is if they can keep the Browns from being explosive through the air. You go look at the yards per attempt the Browns have had against teams over the last couple of seasons. They have been the most explosive through the air against the Bengals. I believe 3 of their top 4 games in yards per attempt have come against Cincinnati over the last couple of seasons. So it's almost as if they know the Bengals are going to sell out to stop Nick Chubb, stop that rushing attack, and instead they're running a lot of play action and creating a lot of one-on-one matchups downfield and letting their guys go get it. Heck, Bengal safety Jesse Bates said that Donovan Peoples-Jones has been the one who's been terrorizing that Bengals secondary over the years. It hasn't been the big names like Amari Cooper or Jarvis Landry or OBJ when he was here. And I think that's what's interesting is that Kevin Stefanski's done a good job of exploiting those mismatches and taking advantages of them against Cincinnati. So, yes, it's going to start with Nick Chubb. The Bengals are going to want to take away that strength. But if they're giving up a lot of yards through the air, it doesn't matter what Nick Chubb gets. That offense is going to keep moving, and you're going to have a tough time getting off the field.
Ben, long time no talk, man. How you been?
Good. I'm trying to solve this tripod nonsense. Aside from that,
I know.
all good.
If we keep doing the interview, we're going to see your feet in a minute. Lock that sucker down, bro.
By the way, Mike, Ben's your buddy. Could you make it more awkward in the middle of the interview? How you been, Ben? Like, what do you have a phone call with him? How you been? We're already in the middle of the interview. Just get going with the question for crying out loud.
I thought it'd be fun.
Why
if
you
I just popped in and
ignoring my
did it in
text?
a respectful manner. But Ben, serious question. Jamar Chase has terrorized everyone in the NFL except the Browns. There was a little back and forth in the offseason on a podcast with some of the Browns DBs saying Chase, and then Chase responded. He didn't play in the first game. What's the expectation for that matchup coming into Sunday's game?
Yeah, this is a matchup that the Bengals receivers are really, interested for and they're excited about because they enjoy good matchups on the other side of the ball, and this Browns secondary is very good. You talk about guys like Denzel Ward, and I think Newsome is very good as well. And when you look at what the Browns do at the line of scrimmage, they make it easy on their quarterbacks. They're able to come downfield and attack, knowing that the quarterback has to get the ball out quick. We've seen what Jamar Chase can do last week. He was hurdling guys, very healthy. I just got back from the Bengals walkthrough. That's why I'm out here outside the stadium. We saw T. Higgins out there, so the Browns will have to contend with him. Higgins popped up on their injury report yesterday with a hamstring issue. I kept a close eye on him during the short window that we have at the beginning of practice. He was suited up, he was catching routes, and it looks like he's going to be good to go. We're going to get more info from Zach Taylor after practice here in about 45 minutes or so. But all in all, the Bengals should be at full strength, and this should be a very good matchup, and we'll see if Jamar Chase can get revenge because he knows he wasn't at his best last year against Cleveland.
Ben, you mentioned Higgins because I saw that he popped up on the injury report yesterday. I saw Sam Hubbard also popped up on the injury report yesterday with a limited practice. And I know Hayden Hurst officially out. I know he got hurt last week. What's the deal with those two guys?
Yeah, Hayden Hurst is incredibly doubtful. I would be surprised if he played. Hasn't practiced all week. We saw him in a boot yesterday, and based on our conversation with him, it doesn't appear like he's going to be playing. It could be a couple weeks even for Hurst is back. As for Sam Hubbard, we saw him going through drills today. He was alongside Trey Hendrickson, his fellow edge rusher, dropping back. He looked comfortable, looked fluid. I don't think there's a major issue there. Again, we'll wait to see what Zach Taylor says, but I would imagine that Hubbard will be available, and I think he's had a very strong year, a guy who's been really good against the run, but this year he's been much better coming against the quarterbacks, coming off the edge, being an effective pass rusher, and that combination has been good, even if the sack numbers haven't been there for the Bengals.
Very good, Ben. We watch the NFL. We think we know what happens. We think we know who's going to win. If you watch last night's game, the more we watch, the less we know. What would be the most surprising outcome for you Sunday between the Browns and the Bengals?
I want to say a Bengals blowout, but because at this rate they're playing really well, and that would be a little tough given how close this game has been over the last few years. I kind of like Cleveland in this. I'm going to be quite honest in this, because until the Bengals can prove they can beat Cleveland, I think this is Cleveland's matchup. Like I said earlier, no team has pummeled the Bengals like the Browns have the last couple of years. We have seen them dominate Cincinnati better than any other team has. We didn't see that in the postseason. We haven't seen Baltimore do that to them. We haven't seen other playoff teams do that to them. For whatever reason, this Cleveland matchup has been a nightmare for Cincinnati. So I expect this one to be close. And even though the Bengals are playing really well and playing like one of the best teams in the AFC, I think this game's still in Cleveland's favor until we see otherwise.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, usually it's the same thing on the flip side for the Chiefs and the Bengals. And so you're watching this on both ends. The Bengals achieved something that I don't know that it's ever been done. They've beaten a team 3 times in the same calendar year that's not in their division. I mean, just the odds that you would even play a non-divisional opponent 3 times in one calendar year, I don't know that that's ever been done before. And obviously, the games, some of the games were from last year, 2 of the games were from last season, but all in 2022.
Yeah.
And it's just odd when you watch Kansas City match up with Cincinnati, and it's the same thing with Cincinnati and Cleveland. You're like, I guess matchups, styles really do make fights.
Yeah, as a boxing guy, that analogy warms my heart because it's 100% true. The styles do make fights, and in this case, the Bengals match up really well against Kansas City. They appear to have Patrick Mahomes' number, and on the flip side, it doesn't even matter who the Browns have a quarterback. They could have Baker Mayfield. They could have Jacoby Brissett. They could have Case Keenum. It doesn't matter. I feel like I've watched the same game the last couple of years. And so it's up to Cincinnati to prove that they can beat Cleveland at what Cleveland has done well the last couple of times. I mean, it hasn't been anything new. We've seen the Browns do the same things over and over to the Bengals. Can they do that again? Yeah. I think that's going to be the big question, and the Bengals have to prove that they can change and they can beat a Cleveland team that has had their number.
I'm glad you made that point because in the last 3 games, and I know that the second one and the middle one last year, much of the starters were resting, but Kevin Stefanski with 3 different quarterbacks has beaten the reigning AFC champion. And that's just, it's an oddity. And if he does it tomorrow, he would have beaten them with 4 different quarterbacks, or Sunday rather.
Yeah.
He'll do it with 4 different quarterbacks in the span of a year. It's just mind-boggling.
Nuts. Hey, Ben, did you see that graphic Mike just put up for you, by the way? Can he see that, Mike?
I missed it. I'm still trying to keep this tripod level. I'm just out here just one hand out.
Look at that. You got to see this.
Look at that. Look at that graphic.
Career record 1-0.
Wants all the smoke.
So listen, when you know it's time to retire on top, sometimes it's just your time to go out and shine. Now listen, I can be goaded back out of retirement under the right circumstances. We have yet to see it happen. Over years, we've come close, but luckily it hasn't happened yet.
Ben, don't do it, and here's why. My last professional pitching performance was a no-hitter. Do you think I'm going to go back and tarnish that? Now, it was only a 2-inning no-hitter, but I'm not going to mess with that. I'm good.
I have seen Ben get close, though. There have been some times
I heard.
when
Don't press Ben's buttons.
Hey, man, Ben, if you hit me, I'm suing you, dog.
Hey, listen, I'm
4 times your size.
Yeah, against a guy like you, he's going to only get 1.
Right.
It better land on the spot.
G. Bush got knocked out by somebody named Baby.
Ben, you're awesome, man. We really appreciate you. Thanks for coming on,
Thanks,
brother.
Ben.
Hey, thank y'all for having me.
He's really good.